Well, good evening, everybody. What a beautiful setup, people. And we're all in person, and I can see faces. What a night. Where this evening is all about love. And in love, teeth and tongue must meet, right? Okay. Well, there's been a long standing argument since, well, I would say the beginning of time, where we often wanted to find out who did what in what role. More specifically, we wanted to know who ruled the roost. Now, when you talk to a man, they will say, I do. And when you talk to a woman, they will smile and nod. Well, this story is not a Jamaican story. This story is actually a story from the DR, or the Dominican Republic, but we are one Caribbean, and this story was just too sweet not to share. Long ago, on this small island, there were two friends. And we know that there aren't many things that could divide friendships, especially long-standing friendships. All right, let me say it this way. This story might be just a little bit offensive, but that's just because we've evolved now and our times are a little bit different and roles have also changed. But way back then, there was a role for a man and a role for a woman. And in this case, there were two friends. There was one who sold yucca and corn, and then there was Francisco who sold yams. And the two of them were entrepreneurs on the island. They were merchants and they were good friends. They often sold near to each other, and whenever they got together, they would talk about this and that, life and all kinds of things. Well, one, being the older of the two, decided to help his friend who had not yet been married, but wanted to give him some advice because he was well on his way. And so he said to his friend, there is something that we've long argued about for a long time. I'm talking about way back when Christopher Columbus discovered this island. Let's not get into that. That's a story for another day. But in the meantime, Francisco said, no, sir. What are you trying to tell me? Because I am young and I know many things. Well, Juan said, you don't know this, but I'm going to help you. You are not yet married and I am. So let me tell you that when it comes to who rules the roost, it's going to be a woman. Francisco said, no, sir, you are 1,000 times wrong. That is not the case. What happens is the man rules the roost and the woman just cackles. Whoa. One said, sir, that's not the way to go. And the two of them argued back and forth. And of course, friendships last a very long time. But when it comes to a woman, friendships get a little weary. And so the two argued back and forth and back and forth. And this argument couldn't come to a conclusion. It got so bad that they would do their business in silence. They wouldn't speak to each other. They would wait until all of the customers left, and then they would start the argument again because Francisco believed he was right, and so did Juan. Well, you're supposed to respect your elders, and so he tried his best to do so. Yet, they both had their own position. One looked at the situation and said, this isn't good. I'm hurting myself and hurting my friend. But I do have a solution. So he said, Francisco, let we bet. Let me take 12 of my horses and you take 12 of your cows. And what we will do is go to each of the houses in the community and find out who rules the roof. If it is a woman, we give a cow. If it is a man, we give a horse. This is the way we'll solve our problem. Francisco thought about this. 12 of my cows, 12 of your horses. I believe I'm right, so I'm going to go home with all of my cows. Yes, let's do it tomorrow morning. So the next day, there were 12 horses and 12 cows, and the two set out to find out who really ruled the roost in their community. Before they got to the first house, they already knew the answer. You see, when they were walking down the street, they were not even quite in the yard yet, and they could hear the woman telling her husband that he was such a fool for leaving the gate open and letting the pig out. And so Francisco knocked on the door and gave the cow. They went down the street to the next house, and when they got to that house, they could hear the woman say, "You fool, you forgot the bread. Go and get the bread. No arguing." She got a cow too. And they went down further and further and further. And the further they went, one smile grew bigger and bigger, and Francisco's frown got longer and longer, and he was running out of cows. They finally got to the last house in the community. Now, the owner of this house was the judge. This is the man who made all of the rules and helped to keep everyone in line and fair, right? Criminals at bay and everyone else happy and living together. So this must be the place. They went to the door and they gave greetings to the judge who opened, and his wife wasn't home. And so he said, "Gentlemen, what's going on here today?" And they said, "Well, Judge, we are on a mission to find out who rules the roost. And so far, we have found that the women rule. And, well, we're looking for a man who rules the roost, and we haven't found one yet." "Well, you've come to the right place." Excited, one said, "Well, I have got to find out. This is a question we've been asking, and since you know what we're here for, I'm going to ask you, sir, who rules in your house?" The judge thought about it, and he smiled, and he said, "Well, that's easy. I rule my roost. The way that it works is that you have to let the woman know the very first hour of your marriage who is the ruler." And so that's what he did. I mentioned his wife wasn't home, right? Okay. And so one was excited because even though he was going to lose a horse, there's a man who rules the roost. They were excited. And the judge went on to dictate what he does in his house, and they were even more excited. They said, "Sir, come and choose the horse of your liking." And the judge came outside and he said, "For real?" They said yes. And so he came out and he looked at the black one. "Oh, this one looks like he could run a good race. But this brown one, very pretty. And this spotted one, he looked at all the horses and he said, "I really can't decide. But there is one person who is really good at picking horses. Really good. But she's not here. But if we could wait till my wife comes home, then, right? I really want to make her happy. Yeah?" One looked at Francisco and said, "Geez, for real?" "Francisco, give him the cow." And so the judge too got a cow. But we found out a few things in this experiment. We found out that not only in the DR, but around the entire world, if you ever want to know who is really in charge, always look to the woman. All right, I don't know how much more time I can squeeze, but I figured I can't come in and come out without an Anancy story, right? All right, since we're talking about love, I'm gonna tell you the story about Anancy and Tiger. Well, Anancy and Tiger were good friends. And you know how good friends go. They talk about everything, they hang out, they do things. There was only one problem. They both liked the same woman. Miss Quabisha. Quabisha had the Coca-Cola body shape and she was nice. But you see, she would date Anancy during the day and Tiger at night because, we all want a strong, strapping man to take us out at night. And so Anancy found this out and said, "Well, how am I supposed to compete with Tiger?" Well, he had to come up with a plan. And so Anancy decided that he was going to set Quabisha straight. The next day when he meant to meet Quabisha, he feigned that he was sad. Oh. And finally Quabisha said, "Anancy, what is your problem? We're here supposed to having a good time, and the only thing you can do is sigh." "Well, may I have something to tell you. And Anancy waited and waited as if he didn't want to tell the story. But you know Anancy, him love to tell story. So he said, Miss Kabisha, you are in love with Tiger. And Tiger, well, him is a old riding horse. Could you imagine? Strapped in, handsome Tiger, an old riding horse? Well, Anancy had to prove it. Kabisha said, I can't take your word for it. You have to prove it. And Anancy did. Anancy went home and pretended that he was sick. That evening, Miss Kabisha met up with Tiger, and the two of them were supposed to be having a great time, dancing and laughing and all kinds of things. But Miss Kabisha did the sighing. And when Tiger asked her what her problem was, she said, well, you see, Anancy told me a thing, and it is going to make this a problem. Anancy told me that you is an old riding horse and that he could prove it. Now, we all know tigers, and they all have tempers. And Tiger fled in his temper and went all the way to Anancy's house, banged on the door as if it was going to fall off its hinges. When he reached, he said, Anancy, you have to come and set things straight. Well, this is a long story. I'm going to give you the short story. Well, Anancy pretended to be sick to the point where he couldn't move. And so he convinced Tiger that the best way to get to Miss Kabisha's house, the fastest way possible, would be to put a saddle on his back. And so Tiger, wanting to get this over with really quickly and get back to his woman, decided to put on the saddle. When he put on the saddle, he missed that Anancy also put on spurs and grabbed a whip. By the time they got close to Miss Kabisha's house, Anancy went from sick to starting to ride. And Anancy was a very good rider. And when they got to really, really close to Miss Kabisha's house, Anancy pulled back his whip and pashai! He hit the side of Tiger so hard that Tiger leaped and started running faster and faster. Miss Kabisha, Anancy called. When she looked out, she saw Anancy riding her so-called man like he was a riding horse. And that was the end of that. So if you ever wonder why tigers don't live with everybody else and why they are in the forest or the jungle, this would be why.